Well, I think things are getting a lot simpler. There was a time when music was really getting heavily produced, and people are getting back to basics now.
Yeah.
I think it's a good move.
I had a 12-track Scully tape recorder, and everything was jammed into a space about half the size of this room.
It's more than a feeling, when I hear that old song they used to play.
What is missing? The drums are there, the vocals soar. But something is missing, the thing that made Boston sound like Boston. Those shimmering harmonies and melodic leads weren't just background noise, they were the spine of a band that defined arena rock in the 70s. And one of the men behind that sound wasn't just another hired gun. He was a founding force. Barry Goudreau may not be the most famous name in classic rock, but without him, the band's rise would have sounded very different. His story isn't just about solos and riffs, it's about early promise, spectacular success, and the long road to creative freedom. Barry Goudreau was born in Boston, Massachusetts, in the autumn of 1951. Like so many children of that post-war generation, he first experienced rock and roll through the radio, stations that pumped out a mix of rhythm and blues, British invasion hits, and American garage bands. He was still a child when he saw performers on television, clutching guitars and playing to screaming audiences. It lit a spark that never went out. His parents weren't immediately convinced this new obsession would last. They borrowed an old acoustic guitar to test the waters. Barry played until his fingers bled. That was enough proof. His parents eventually bought him a white 1962 Fender Stratocaster, a guitar that would shape his musical identity. Through his teenage years, he played in school bands, learning both the craft of performance and the dynamics of working in groups. One of those early bands included Sib Hashian, a drummer who would one day help him shape the sound of one of the biggest rock groups of the 70s. But Barry wasn't just a garage guitarist. He went to university to study geology at Boston University. It was there, while playing in student bands, that he crossed paths with a keyboard player and tinkerer named Tom Schultz. This meeting would change everything.
I went off to college at Boston University, and right across the river from Boston University is MIT. A guy I had been in a band with in high school was over at MIT. And, both of us were trying to take school seriously, and, we still wanted to play music. So we said, let's get together and we'll just play just for the fun of it. And, we ended up rehearsing in the basement of this fraternity house. And, we'd play fraternity parties and that sort of thing, just for yucks. So at one point we decided we wanted to get a keyboard player, and I put an ad in the local newspaper for a keyboard player, and Tom Schultz answered the ad.
Tom Schultz was already working on songs in his basement studio, layering guitars and vocals on homemade demos.
Tom had rented an apartment, and in the basement was he had a pine paneled basement where he had set up this recording studio. And by his accounts, it was tiny and cramped, and it always flooded. And the other half of it too is he had built an isolation booth where he would be able to set up the drums. And when I say it was a tiny isolation booth, he could barely fit the drums in.
I've made all the Boston recordings in my basement, wherever I happen to be. There were many different basements, but it was always in the basement. And it still is today. I had a 12-track Scully tape recorder, and everything was jammed into a space about half the size of this room. It was, I basically had to make do with what I had.
Barry joined those early sessions, bringing both musical ability and a willingness to experiment. Together, they built the blueprint for what would become Boston's sound, a polished, soaring multi-guitar approach that felt both massive and melodic. As they refined their songs, another key player joined, Brad Delp, whose voice would become the band's signature. After years of frustration trying to land a record deal, their persistence paid off. In 1975, Epic Records signed the group and Boston was officially born.
So, it was a long time in the making. We did our first demo 1969.
Wow.
Until 1975 that the band was actually signed. And we were turned on by every record label, including Epic, the record label that ended up picking us up. Even they rejected us.
Their debut album, simply titled Boston, was released in 1976. Barry's guitar work blended seamlessly with Scholz's layers, giving the band its dual guitar punch. Tracks like More Than a Feeling, Peace of Mind and 4 Play Long Time became radio staples. The album shot to number 3 on the charts and went on to sell millions of copies worldwide.
3 things you learned from Tom. This is from Andre Allure.
This is going to seem kind of strange, but the scientific method. You know, Tom went to school for engineering, electrical engineering, and he had a very focused way of doing things, and I picked up on that, and that was very powerful, actually.
A very intense worker in the studio, and for myself, not being a real technically oriented person, I'm constantly amazed at what he does, you know, in the recording studio. I basically stand up in front of a microphone and sing, and he does all the rest.
Every time I record a song, it's always with equipment with new settings, and I somehow seem to go in big circles and then come back to the same sound again. But when I get there, I know it.
While Scholz's meticulous production methods became legendary, Barry's playing on stage and in the studio gave the songs energy and bite. As the band toured arenas across America, he found himself living the dream of a generation, playing to packed houses, delivering one of the defining sounds of the decade.
And for people like me, I can easily tell you that they were the soundtrack for that summer of '76 into '77.
But creative partnerships can be fragile, and tensions were never far away.
It is a collaborative effort, but it would be a mistake to say that it's an equal partnership. I really give Tom the bulk of the credit for the Boston sound, obviously, he being the producer, engineer, and writer of most of the material.
Scholz controlled the studio and the business. Goudreau, though essential to the live sound, often found his parts rewritten or re-recorded in the basement before an album saw the light of day. That friction would grow with each passing year.
Was Tom tough to work with?
Well, you know, in the studio, no. In the studio, not at all. But out live, playing live, yeah, it was difficult. He's a real perfectionist, and he knew exactly what he wanted, and you know, it was tough sometimes.
The band returned in 1978 with Don't Look Back, an album that once again sold in the millions. Goudreau's guitar is all over the record, but behind the scenes, creative control had tightened even more. Scholz was determined to oversee every second of sound. For Barry, the thrill of success was being matched by a frustration with how little input he ultimately had in shaping the music. That creative tension set the stage for the next chapter, one that would push him out of the band that had made his name. In 1980, while Boston's future was clouded by legal battles and delays, Barry decided to step out on his own. He recorded a self-titled solo album with Sib Hashin on drums and Brad Delp on vocals. It sounded unmistakably like Boston, with soaring harmonies and melodic guitar lines. The album climbed into the Billboard charts, but its success triggered a storm. Scholz objected to how the record was marketed, claiming it traded on Boston's sound and name. To make matters worse, the band was already under legal pressure from the label over missed deadlines. The result was inevitable. Barry left the band. A guitarist who had helped build one of rock's most iconic sounds was suddenly on the outside.
Let's hypothetically say you got that call to go back. I know why you said you couldn't, but if a call came, would you go back to that band?
At this point, I don't think so, no.
Barry didn't disappear. In the mid-1980s, he formed Orion the Hunter, a new band that brought in Fran Cosmo on vocals, with Brad Delp contributing behind the scenes. Their 1984 album produced the single So You Ran, which reached rock radio and gave Barry a fresh platform. The band opened for Aerosmith on tour, playing to large audiences. But despite a strong start, Orion the Hunter lasted just one album. The mid-80s was shifting toward new wave and glam metal, and Barry's melodic hard rock struggled to find a lasting foothold. Still, the project cemented his ability to lead his own band, and proved he wasn't merely a sideman to Schultz. In the early 1990s, Barry reunited with Brad Delp to form RTZ, Return to Zero. The band scored moderate radio success with songs like Until Your Love Comes Back Around and Face the Music.
I just gotta see your face until your love comes back around.
Their sound was classic AOR, melodic, guitar-driven, and built on Delp's unmistakable voice. But Boston once again cast a shadow. When Delp returned to Tom Schultz's group, RTZ's momentum faded. Barry kept working, recording, and performing, a constant presence in the Boston music scene even as mainstream attention moved elsewhere. Barry spent the next 2 decades doing what he always did best: playing. He joined blues rock outfit Ernie and the Automatics alongside Sib Hashian.
Ernie has really put it together with this thing. You know, music needs a lot of people to come to its aid today because, you know, a lot of people say, oh, music's not important. You know what? Music is important. And what music drives us, we're going to keep music healthy and alive.
Their 2009 album Low Expectations hit the Billboard Blues chart. It was a sign that Barry had never lost his love for performing, no matter how many twists his career had taken. He also continued to guest on stage with other Boston area musicians, staying connected to the local scene that had shaped him. In the late 2010s, Barry returned with a new project, Barry Goudreau's Engine Room. Teaming up with longtime collaborators Brian Mays, Tim Archibald, and Tony DePietro, he released the album Full Steam Ahead in 2017. A follow-up record, The Road, arrived in 2021. These records didn't have the commercial impact of Boston's glory years, but they didn't need to. They were pure expressions of a veteran musician doing what he loved. No label wars, no creative fights, just music. Barry has spoken openly in interviews about his regrets over how his departure from Boston happened, but he's also said that the early years gave him a platform to build a lifelong career, one that's still going strong. Barry Goudreau's name may not be as well known as some of his contemporaries, but his fingerprints are all over one of the most successful debut albums in rock history. His melodic, precise playing helped shape a sound that sold millions of records, filled stadiums, and defined an era. Beyond the hits, he represents something else, the quiet resilience of a working musician who never stopped playing. From the basements of Boston to arenas around the world and back to local clubs, he's kept the guitar at the center of his life. His career reminds us that not all rock stories are written in headlines. Some are written in riffs, gigs, and the love of the craft. And Barry Goudreau has been writing his for more than half a century. Boston's first album is indeed a masterpiece, and the thumbnail on screen, How Boston Fooled the Music Industry with Their Debut Album, explains in more detail how it was made.